In our hours-long interview, the detectives shed new light on the lead that finally broke the 30-year cold case wide open. 30 years.
You wanted to find out who did this.
1,573 weeks.
You wanted the answers. You wanted to bring somebody to justice.
11,041 days.
And you wanted to give April's family some closure.
The search for who killed April Tinsley ran cold.
All the guys that worked on it before us didn't give up.
Over the years, more than 100 detectives.
It went multi-state even, guys coming in to help.
1,100 tips.
We had a group of investigators from several different agencies that we met monthly.
More man-hours than can be counted.
We had guys working on it that weren't even assigned to it.
Then the lead that changed everything. April 1st, 1988, 8-year-old April Marie Tinsley was walking through her South Fort Wayne neighborhood, but she never made it home. She disappeared from the sidewalk. Her body found 3 days later in a DeKalb County ditch. In the next 3 decades, the case grew in notoriety as barn writings and notes left on little girls' bicycles taunted police.
Wanting justice for her is why it was able to stay alive for so long and why so many people were passionate about the case.
Detectives had always said the DNA evidence found with her body would catch her killer, and it did when Parabon Nanolabs used new genetic genealogy technology.
They went so far as to say, you're probably not going to get the killer, you are going to get the killer. And I think we all looked at each other because we'd been on a roller coaster ride. We thought we'd had the killer 1 or 2 other times, or thought we were getting very close, only to be let down.
Parabon took the killer's DNA sample and through Ancestry Registry data was able to link it to a name and face.
Like disbelief and excitement all at once.
Fort Wayne Police Detective Brian Martin explained to 15 Finds Out it was a second cousin on both Miller's mom and dad's side who did ancestry profiles, and that helped make the match so strong. They were expecting to get the name of perhaps the suspect's great-grandparent, but the results were much, much better, taking them from the top of the family tree all the way to the roots.
We anticipated months of follow-up work, taking that family line down and doing interviews to get our suspect, and we were actually able to be given great lead information on, and it came down between 2 individuals.
It started to set in that, wow, we might actually have the results that we need and be able to solve this case finally.
It was quickly clear John D. Miller was the name to focus on. He lived in Grable, the direct center of all the crime scenes and note locations.
Within a couple hours, we were setting surveillance on John Miller's trailer.
And what did that surveillance look like? What did you do?
We maintained physical surveillance on Mr. Miller virtually around the clock. We knew what he ate, what he drank, where he went, when he went there. We had his daily activities down.
They were also watching his trash for the final piece of evidence.
So we could submit to the Indiana State Police Lab for DNA testing to confirm that he in fact was the individual who abducted, raped, and killed April Tinsley.
DNA from condoms found in John Miller's trash, a match to the DNA found with April 30 years ago, and with the taunting letters, the lead turned into a hit. You're walking up to his door. What are you thinking?
The day started off very early, middle of the night. We wanted to make sure that we were very tight watching John.
He had just pulled up in his car, and Detective Martin and I were waiting across the street.
And when he pulled up, Trooper Hetrick and I approached John. He had groceries in the back of the car. We gave him opportunity to take the groceries into the house. He said no.
We didn't want him to know why we were there, although he probably inside knew why. But we just wanted to come across calm, like it was no big deal.
We asked him if he'd be willing to come help us with a situation that we were investigating.
Asked him to come with us down to the Fort Wayne Police Department, and he complied and was more than willing to come with us.
I think we both looked at each other and were like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is happening.
Our story picks back up tonight at 6 o'clock. Hear what Miller talked to detectives about in the car ride to the police station. And the detectives tell us chilling new details of Miller's confession. why he took April, and how detectives know if he tried to take any other children. Don't miss our 15 Finds Out exclusive Justice for April all day today, only on Wayne 15.
Asked him to come with us down to the Fort Wayne Police Department, and he was more than willing to come with us.
John D. Miller, the man who killed April Tinsley in 1988, now in a police car, headed to the station with detectives. What was he like? What was his mannerisms? What demeanor?
He was very talkative with us. We discussed hobbies, where he told us he liked to do word searches and crossword puzzles.
Miller casually chatted with the detectives in the car, saying how much he loved police shows, never missing an episode of Live PD. Do you think he was enjoying it, having fun being part of what, in his mind, a police show?
Absolutely. I think the fact that we engaged him in a conversation about that, it actually maybe calmed him down a little bit, made him trust us a little bit. He actually probably enjoyed the car ride down.
In the interview room in the station, Miller's openness continued.
We in fact asked him, John, do you have any idea why we have you here? Do you know why we asked you to come down here? And he looked at us and said, April Tinsley. I tried just to maintain a very calm, casual look at him. I didn't want to like jump out of my chair. We brought up nothing about April Tinsley's case.
I couldn't believe that he said her name. At that point, I knew that we were going to find out what happened to April.
Miller proceeded to lay out the details of April's abduction, sexual assault, and murder. Why was he down in April's neighborhood back in 1988?
He was trolling around looking for a target of opportunity to abduct. And he indicated to us that he had seen April walking down the street. He pulled up a block and was waiting outside his vehicle for her to walk by. He stated that he approached her, told her to get in the car, she did, and that he then took her back to his trailer in Grable. And in fact, it's the same trailer that he was living in that he took her to back in 1988.
And he molested her there?
Yes.
Did he kill her there?
Yes. He said that he waited until after dark and he took and dumped April's body along County Road 68.
In DeKalb County, where the 8-year-old was found 3 days later. April's mom, when I talked to her, she said her main and only question is, why? Why April? Did he answer that?
In an indirect way, John did answer that, and I think he was looking for a child who was more suitable for what he wanted. And he saw her as a target of opportunity, and he jumped on that.
But he had not seen her before that day.
No.
He was trolling for someone to abduct. It was premeditated.
Right. It could have been anybody, any little kid in that area that day, and that probably was not the first time that he had gone looking.
And Miller told detectives it was not his last. After his arrest last July, all of us wondered if he would become a suspect in any other cases. How do you know that he did not commit any other crime?
First and foremost, we had his DNA sample early on and it was entered into the database, and there were never any other hits to that DNA sample. He was very open. He was very, I believe, honest with us once we began talking to him. He admitted that he did drive around this. He said there were a lot of times he drove around neighborhoods, shopping centers, and just looked and never saw a target of opportunity that he felt that he could abduct. It was just very disturbing to even hear him say that he had even thought about grabbing another child after April. And all the years between when he took April until he was arrested, I would think there would be a lot of time that he could have potentially grabbed another child, and thankfully did not.
But he did threaten to. Notes left on little girls' bicycles and scribbled on a barn door saying he killed April and he'd kill again. Messages Miller admitted to leaving.
He wanted to see more media coverage of the crime. He wanted that to be out there. He enjoyed that aspect of it.
He wanted the attention. Ultimately, it's what helped us identify him.
Are you surprised that in 30 years he didn't tell somebody?
After knowing what we know about him now, I'm not surprised. He was a very private person,
working the overnight shift, stocking shelves in the toy section, staying under the radar. Miller was 28 in 1988 when he raped and killed April. In his driver's license photos that police gave to 15 Finds Out, you can see him age. By his arrest at age 59, he seemed feeble, but Hetrick says Miller was deemed fit to stand trial.
He understands what he did. He is socially awkward. He's not well educated, but he's just like anybody else that he knows what he's doing. He knows right from wrong.
For 1,573 weeks, April Tinsley's murder case went unsolved. Then last summer, in only 23 weeks, it went from an arrest to sentencing. It progressed so quickly in part because John Miller took a plea deal and did not go to trial. Many of you had mixed reactions to that outcome. And in our exclusive interview with the detectives closest to the case, we asked, was this justice for April?
We have one less monster on the street.
He's finally getting what he deserves.
80 years behind bars, John D. Miller's sentence for abducting, raping, and killing 8-year-old April Tinsley.
You know, we didn't even know who he was. He was never on our radar. He was never on our suspect list. He had managed to stay below anybody's radar for 30 years.
Until new DNA technology and Parabon nanolabs linked DNA evidence found with April's body in 1988 to Miller. Last July, he confessed to everything.
Just asked him if he knew why he was there, and he said April's name. Yeah, at that point I knew he wanted to tell us too.
Miller didn't go back home after that interview with detectives. The day many had hoped and prayed for, the day April's killer would be caught, had finally come.
I'm sorry that it took 30 years for us to bring John Miller to justice. I feel that the detectives who worked this case for the last 30 years, I want them to know that we never gave up. We never gave up trying to get justice for April and for the Tinsley family.
Detectives immediately started preparing for a trial.
There is so much documentation in this case that I think we spent probably the first month of it just taking old totes, boxes, everything else, and scanning old VHS tapes, cassette tapes, everything else, trying to make everything digital and putting it on a hard drive for evidence. If it went to trial, we were going to be prepared.
It would have been a long trial.
It would have been a very long trial. You had to present everything that's ever been done on the case, and it was boxes on boxes on boxes, and that's from every department.
But the case never reached a jury. Miller accepted a deal, pleading guilty to murder and child molesting. It also allowed the 59-year-old to avoid the possibility of the death penalty. Did you know that there was going to be a plea deal?
Not initially. As time went on, it became apparent that there would probably be a plea. And I think some of that was also maybe facilitated or talked about by Mr. Miller and his legal team themselves. The evidence was overwhelming against Mr. Miller.
Did you want to go to trial?
I like my cases to go to trial because I think that there are a lot of questions that are answered in a trial, but I also know that it would have been very difficult for the family to hear some of the things that Mr. Miller talked about. And I feel that Mr. Miller's going to do the rest of his life in prison, and that is ultimately, that's the end game. That's where what we ultimately all want is for him to be incarcerated and never be on our streets again, and I feel we accomplished that. I know that the family has expressed some concern over the justice, and to me, he's in prison. That's where we wanted him to be, and I'm okay with that.
Would you have supported the death penalty in this?
I would have supported anything that we could do to put John Miller in prison the rest of his life.
And 80 years is that?
Yes.
Was justice done for April?
Yes, I think so. I don't think it was done, obviously, as quick as any of us wanted. I feel for her family. I don't think that they maybe got the end result that they wanted with his sentence, but I hope that in finally knowing what happened, it maybe will provide them some closure. I don't think you ever get over something like that, but now that they know what happened for sure and who did it and that he's not able to do it again, that I hope it at least brings them some closure in the case.